Sarah Rae, welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. Today is another true crime and makeup video that I do once a month, and today is that day. We are doing Ivan Mullett, aka the Backpack Murders, and this is a request video. I had no idea about this case, nothing. I knew nothing about it, and to learn what I did, to research it all, was just incredible. Wow, this case. I can't wait to tell you guys all about it, so I just want to jump straight into it. But with that said, let's jump into it. You know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications of when I upload, and let's get talking about this case. Let's begin. So our case takes place in 1989 to 1993 in Australia. And Australia is actually known to be one of the safest countries in the world. And it's kind of funny that that's said, because in a lot of cases where heinous crimes happen, it is known to be one of the safest areas, or is said to be the safe areas of towns or cities or states. So Ivan Mullett is the man, and he abducted, robbed, essayed, which if you don't know what essay means, it's going to be on the screen, tortured, and murdered 7 backpackers, which is truly the definition of heinous. And Ivan, of course, was born Ivan Robert Marco Mullett, and he was born in Guildford, New South Wales, Australia on December 27th, 1944. And he came from what is considered a poor working class family. And his parents, they argued a lot. And his parents' names are Margaret and Stephen Marco Mullett. And they had a huge family. And when I say huge family, I'm not talking about like 7, like where my mom's family was huge. She had 7 brothers and sisters. I'm talking about bigger. They had 14 children. And Ivan was the 5th of those children. And out of the 14 children, 10 of them were boys. Could you imagine 10 boys in a household? That has to be insane, right? I just, how would you handle that? Oof. And it was said to be a strict household, which I can imagine. I wouldn't blame them, and boys are rowdy. The Mullett boys, they were rowdy, and they would go head to head a lot, and they did this because the weaker of the Mullett family would get bullied. So Ivan would see this and realize that he needed to be dominant to make it through life, right? So that's kind of where he learned how to adapt to this kind of more dominant personality, really, was this upbringing. But still, the boys, most of them pretty much were all known to be troublemakers. Still, the boys were known to be trouble. And I mean, especially with the police, and they would do minor things like petty theft. Boris actually has come out and said by the age of 10, he noticed that things were different when it came to Ivan and the other kids. Like, he just was different. So you could say almost like he noticed that Ivan, there was just something different, and I guess that's kind of foreshadowing to the future, right? So during Ivan's teenage years, since he was constantly a troublemaker, skipping classes and doing all that, he got sent to an institution called Boys Town, and it was for the overburdened family and their wayward sons. And there he was actually an altar boy. And people who went there when Ivan was there have actually said that he was a good person, they never had any trouble with Ivan, and he never caused any problems while he was there. So Ivan's record started out more of a petty manner after he got out of the institution, and he would do things, when I say petty manner, I mean things like stealing cars and breaking and entering actually of an army barracks to steal a safe. And the thing to note is that Ivan was quite a bad criminal. He would get caught constantly, and with that said, he was in and out of jail all the time. In 1969, Ivan's younger sister Margaret will end up getting killed in a car accident, and I've seen things say, because it was near the home, that Ivan was the first one on scene, or that he actually witnessed the accident happen. So I'm not exactly sure which one it is that happened. Either way, it truly affected Ivan in a very deep and hard way. 1 month later, he will actually end up picking up hitchhikers for the very first time, attempt to R-word them. And if you don't know what R-word is, it'll be on screen. He only did it to one of the girls, but he would end up being charged for it and go to court. The hard thing about this is the girls will end up changing their testimony, and he will end up being freed of the charges. And because of this will kind of give him the idea that in the future, if he was to do this again, no one is to make it out alive, right? Because now they can ID him like those two girls did, and he will get charged for it. And that gives him and takes him into the way of what happens into the future, right? So he will end up meeting his wife, Karen, her name is Karen, in 1975. She was 17 and pregnant with Ivan's cousin Mark's baby. And Ivan, in case you wanted to know, was 30. And I've seen where people have reported that Karen was in desperate need of help, and that's why she went to Ivan and started a relationship with him. And then I've seen where she was just in love with him, so I'm not sure exactly the real reason why she ended up with him. But either way, she did, and they would end up marrying in the mid-80s. And the good thing is that Ivan would treat Karen's son, his name is Jason, like his own. And that's a good thing. But Karen, after getting married, would soon find herself regretting that decision of marrying this man, because he ended up becoming quite aggressive and possessive. He wouldn't let Karen out of the house unless he knew where she was going, and he would count every cent she would use, and he wanted receipts with those. He wasn't only gun crazy, he was also, again, violent. He was abusive, and he was unpredictable. So in 1987, Karen will end up getting the strength to leave him. She finally had enough, and she files for divorce and leaves Ivan while he's at work with the help of her mom. And Ivan hated this so bad. He was so furious that he planned and executed revenge on her. And what he ends up doing is that he goes and burns down Karen's parents, the front of their house, as revenge because she left him. That is one insane dude, in my opinion. What happens next, Karen does blame herself for, because she feels like when she was with Ivan had control of her, of what she did and everything. He had somebody to focus on all of his issues and just everything. And now that she's gone, he needed to go out and find another person to do that with. Hence this case and what happens. And so she actually blames herself, which I want to make known that I know Karen probably won't ever watch this. Even though that is, I still want it to be known that Karen, it is 100% not your fault. I feel like it would have been you if you would have stayed. It was going to be somebody at some point. And that's the terrifying thing about it. So she blames herself. 6 months later, after she divorces him and he does what he did to the parents' house, Karen's parents' house, the first set of backpackers go missing. And it was December 30th, 1989. And it was James Gibson, who was 19 at the time, and Deborah Everest, who were dating, and she was 19 as well. And they were visiting Sydney, and they were last seen leaving Surrey Hills to hitchhike 300 miles to Albury when they went missing. If you don't know what a backpacker is, it's pretty much just somebody who travels and carries their belongings in a backpack, and they travel from place to place, typically by hitchhiking. James Gibson and Deborah Everest go missing. They are the first of the backpackers, the 7 backpackers to go missing. And then January 25th, 1990, Ivan was at it again, but this time things didn't go according to plan. He picked up a guy named Paul Onions, and he is going to be very important to this whole case. So Paul was 24 at the time, and after Ivan picked up Paul has said everything was like going fine at first, and then he noted that the atmosphere changed, and Ivan pulled over to get something out of the back of the vehicle. And again, noting that the atmosphere had changed, that something was off, and that feeling right there is really what saved Paul's life, because as Ivan was getting something out of the back of the vehicle, Paul got out and ran. And as he was getting out, Ivan produced a pistol, and Paul started weaving, going back and forth as he was running, and Ivan started shooting but kept missing Paul because of the weaving technique, which he learned in the military. And Paul saw a car that was approaching, he got in and he got away. But Ivan, to note, was going under an alias name by Bill. The lucky thing is Paul got away. He did report this incident to the police, but nothing ever came of it. It was never investigated. Due to what happened with Paul, it is said that Ivan didn't murder anybody for a year. Now, opinions, take with that with what you want, because we're going to touch a little bit on that a little later, but for right now, we're going to say that he didn't kill anybody for a year. So January 20th, 1991 came, and backpacker Simone Schmiedle, she is 21, and she left Sydney to hitchhike to meet her mom in Melbourne. Said it right, see? Anyways, she never made it, and you know, her mom didn't really think anything of it. She just thought that maybe she was with her friends or something, but she never made it. She went missing as well. And then on December 26th, Gabor Nigerbar and Anya Habshid, they left King's Cross to hike to Darwin, and they were all not seen again either. On April 18th, 1992, 2 more went missing, and their names were Caroline Clark, and she was 21, and Joanne Walters, who was 22. They were last seen leaving King's Cross, and they were hitchhiking all around Australia to go fruit picking, and they were never seen again. So I know what you're thinking. Why backpackers, right? Because I know that's what I was thinking. But if you think about it, you know, backpackers, they're away from their family and friends, and anybody who knows where they are or what they're doing. And you also got to think of the time when this happened. This wasn't during the age of technology where we had cell phones on every person, or had cell phones really like they are now. So they really relied more on payphones and things like that, or going into shops or hotels maybe. But this is 89 to 93. Well, 93 is when they started finding the victims. So you're talking about people who they don't have any way to contact people. They're almost the perfect target, especially for that time. So without cell phones, it really cuts off communication. Backpackers. Caroline Clark family started getting worried due to the fact that they went 6 weeks without hearing from Caroline, and that is not like her. She constantly calls her family, and especially when there's a birthday in the family, she always calls. And this time she didn't. In 6 weeks, and a birthday is completely unlike her. So they started calling around to her friends to see if anybody's seen or heard from her. And they started doing everything they could to signal these red flags outward to police and anybody who would be able to help them find their daughter, because they know something's wrong. 4 months later, on September 19th, 1992, 2 cross-country runners came across 2 bodies in Belanglo State Forest and called the police to come and look what they found. I will be putting now a time on screen right here where you can fast forward if you don't want to hear how someone was killed, because I know that could be really hard to hear for some people. So that will be on screen now. They had found the bodies of Caroline Clark and Joanne Walters. Joanne was stabbed 14 times, 4 in the chest, once in the neck, 9 in the back, which would have paralyzed her. Caroline Clark was shot 10 times in the head as if it was target practice, which is brutal and just terrifying that somebody would do that to another human being. There was also evidence of SA with the 2 girls, and they were both left in a specific placement. So Caroline was left lying face down with her arm up and her head on her hand, and Joanne was placed under a rock, and her clothes, she was also face down, and her clothes were lying just neatly next to her. So the police brought in a forensic psychiatrist named Dr. Rod Milton to characterize the killer using the crime scene as his baseline. And he came up with a few things that are quite interesting. So the first thing is that he felt like the person was violent for a reason, and not because he enjoyed it. He was violent because he was violent. The second is that he felt like there was 2 people instead of 1, and his reason for that is because of the nature of the murders. Well, first, he felt like that they grew up in a violent environment and they have criminal past. He also says the nature of some of the attacks. Some were brutally murdered and killed, and others were just different in the way they were killed. Some seem impulsive and like someone who was shy and got more pleasure in killing, and then others were very dominant and aggressive. So he felt like it had to have been 2 people. He also felt like it was sexual in nature simply because of the arrangement of the clothes. So those were some of his analysis when looking at the crime scene. He also felt like the dominant one was aggressive. He also felt like he was older and a cold person who loves guns and hates women and authority, who was also a loner and loves power. They also figured that the person had to have been living nearby to the forest simply because of the fact that they had to have known the ins and outs of that forest because of the location of where the bodies were. So after that, they started the investigation using criminal backgrounds and the radius surrounding the forest. On October 5th, 1993, a local was searching for firewood when they came across a thigh bone and a skull, and they called 911 immediately. And it turns out they found, through, of course, testing, but they found the bodies of Deborah Everest and her boyfriend, who wasn't far from her, lying in a fetal position, James Gibson. Now, again, I'm going to put a timestamp on screen for anybody who doesn't want to hear how the victims were killed. I will give you a moment to skip ahead. And now I'm going to count from 3, 2, and 1. So James was stabbed 8 times, which some of those had cut his spine, paralyzing him. Some were on his chest, puncturing his lungs and his heart. It is also worthy to note that they were very violent and aggressive, and there was no defensive wounds found on either of these 2 bodies. Deborah, she was badly beaten. Her wounds, they found that her skull was fractured in 2 places and her jaw was broken. There was also signs of knife marks on her head, and there was also a stab wound on her back. So on October 8th, 1993, they ruled that the 4 murders were related. They also noticed that the personal belongings to the victims were indeed gone. And this was one of the biggest searches for a killer. And the search that's about to come up in the forest is one of the biggest searches as well in Australia. I don't know if it's still one of the biggest searches, but at the time and for a long time, it was one of the biggest searches Australia's ever seen. Also, if you notice, the more Ivan's killing, the more brutal and aggressive his killing methods are getting. And it's only going to get worse from here. So on November 1st, 1993, the police did a sweep of the Belangolo forest and found 3 more bodies. Let me put another time on the screen. If you don't want to hear this, you can fast forward to the time on screen, because I am going to talk about 3 more victims, and then this will be the last time. So I'm going to count back from 3 now. 3, 2, 1. Alright, so the first body they found was Simone Schmiedle, and she was stabbed 8 times, which one of them actually severed her spine. And she also had some that punctured her lungs and heart. Then they found Guyber Nigerbar. He was shot in the head 6 times, and there was a sign of strangulation as well. Lastly, which is what I was talking about earlier, they're only getting worse, and this is the final. Anya Habshid. She was decapitated with either a machete or a sword, and the sad thing is that to this day her head has never been found. So the police ended up asking for the public help in this, which is where Paul Onions comes back into the story to haunt Ivan Mullett's worst nightmares and memories. I don't know. I wanted to say that. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, Paul Onions comes back and he talks about his attack, and he gets in touch with the police, but won't you believe it? You probably can if you're into true crime, but they lost his statement. Congratulations, guys. Good job. So there's 2 occasions they really could have stopped this, in my opinion. Anyways, but Paul again brought up his past and everything that happened. But, you know, he wasn't the only one that brought up the Mulletts. I mean, other people brought them up because of their criminal history, and people brought up Ivan because of his love for guns. So people were thinking about Ivan and the Mulletts. I mean, so that's kind of what got them down the road in the path of the Mulletts. At the time, Paul didn't know Ivan was named Ivan. He just knew him as Bill. So at the crime scene, they found a lot of bullets, and they found that it belongs to a very specific type of gun. One that isn't common for an Australian to have. They call it a US-made Ruger 1022 rifle. And then they found a report from a local wife who was concerned about her husband's workmate, who turned out to be Richard Mullett, Ivan Mullett's younger brother. And I guess he was going around, allegedly, okay, saying that they hadn't found all the bodies yet, they haven't found the Germans, and that he knew who the killer was, and that this person stabbed them like slicing sliced bread, a loaf of sliced bread, or whatever. And, you know, finding the report of the 2 hitchhikers who took Ivan to court, you remember earlier. And then Paul ID'd Ivan Mullett from a picture lineup. And remember, he knew him as Bill. But pointing out Ivan really meant a lot to this whole case. And then Karen, Ivan's ex-wife, got into this and confirmed that he frequented Belangolo Forest a lot, and that he was obsessed with guns, and he was very confident with guns, and that he used to go by the name Bill as an alias. So all of this let them take and be able to go and get a warrant for his home to search not only Ivan's home, but the Mullett family's homes as well. And so on May 22nd, 1994, the police went and raided Ivan Mullett's home, who was 49 at the time, and they also arrest Ivan for what happened with Paul Onions, and that gave them the opportunity to interrogate him on the backpack murders. But that's not the only reason that they were able to do that, because Ivan's house, they found everything they needed when it came to the backpack murder case, which is crazy. Okay, you think Ivan would have gotten rid of all that stuff, but they're all over his house. I mean, they found everything, all the evidence they needed. Wouldn't you think he would get rid of that stuff? But no, they found sleeping bags, they found a map of Belangolo Forest, they found the electrical wire lines that was the same that was there at the crime scene. They found the gun, that US Ruger 1022 rifle thing, and the ammunition. They found a knife that was consistent with the stab marks. They found a pistol. They found its ammunition. They found a pillowcase that had bloodstains on it that matched one of the victims. And they found a water bottle, and they found a camera, and they found tents and cooking sets. Oh my gosh, they found so much stuff, and a lot of it had the victims' names on it. Like, not only that, they ended up finding a shirt that belonged to Paul Onions himself. They also found things from the victims at Ivan Mullett's mother's house, which is kind of the reason why a lot of people think that one of the other Mulletts were involved as well. Finally, they had enough on him to take him to court for the backpack murders, and Ivan in custody was questioned about everything, and he kept his innocence, and he stayed that way until he died, unfortunately. So during the whole thing, when he was in court, I mean, his defense said that somebody else did it. when he went to court, which was on March 25th, 1996, most of the family actually thinks that Ivan was set up by the police. So, I mean, the whole thing on Ivan's side was he was set up. But the prosecution side was that there was no other person. There couldn't be because of Ivan's dominant behavior. Ivan did end up taking the stand, which, would you have let him? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you were Ivan, would you have taken the stand? Because when I found that out, that he ended up taking the stand, I was like, oh, why did he do that? I don't think he should have done that. But nevertheless, he did. And everything was going fine until they asked him about a glove that was found at his house and at the crime scene. Ivan actually got upset and blurted out that I never wore no, and then he stopped himself. When I heard that, I was like, oh my God, the prosecution was like, do you mean you didn't wear gloves in the forest? And then he looked at the judge and the jury and tells them, I think that would be a good moment to adjourn for the day. And I'm over here like, yeah, I think that would be a good thing too. I mean, and then not too long after that, the jury did spend 20 hours over 4 days deliberating. And they used all of Paul Onion's testimonies and everything he went through. All of the ex-wife's testimony, you know, pointing out that, yes, he went to the forest, even though Ivan's saying he never did. And how confident he is with guns and all of that. And then all the evidence. They did find him guilty, and he got sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences, plus 18 years on July 27th, 1996. They did build a beautiful memorial for the 7 backpackers who lost their lives, which I think is so beautiful. As for Ivan, he didn't just go quietly. He has made some headlines over the years before he died, which are like, one time in 2009, he cut off the tip of his finger with a plastic knife. Who does that? I mean, really, who does that? And his goal was to mail it to the high court. I guess he was angry. They couldn't, the doctors couldn't put it back on him. So, I mean, I guess karma. But that's not the only thing he did while he was in prison. He also, at one point, swallowed a bunch of razor blades. And then at another point, he swallowed staples. And other times, he did other metals. Like, it's just, this man just swallows anything, I guess. But either way, Ivan did die eventually on at the Long Bay prison on October 27th, 1919. Ivan did end up dying finally on October 27th, 2019 in Long Bay prison due to esophageal and stomach cancer. Something I want to do just to lighten the mood a little bit was, when I was researching this, I found something that cracked me up so hard. First, I thought it was an insult to anyone who had a loved one that lost their lives due to Ivan, until I clicked on the article and read the full title. So I'm going to read it to you guys, okay? So at first I read, "Taken too soon. Ivan Mullett dies at 74 before." And I was like, what? How are you going to say taken too soon for Ivan Mullett? This guy is horrendous and the worst person on earth. But the whole title, this is why I've been telling you guys to not assume. Because the whole title actually reads, "Taken too soon. Ivan Mullett dies at 74 before every Australian had a chance to kick him in the groin." This is the greatest thing ever. I will link that in the description box down below with other of the stuff I've used to find my research. But so continuing, Ivan Mullett's family actually sticks by him, except his brother Boris, who allegedly is denounced by his family because of him speaking out publicly in favor of the families that lost their loved ones due to Ivan, and Boris being disgusted by what Ivan did. Hold on. Lastly, I want to add that these 7 people are not believed to be the only people Ivan has killed. So Boris believes that it's actually more like 20 or so. He says that works different jobs. He's always at a different job, and whenever he goes to a new job, people start to go missing. And he believes that Ivan has something to do with it. And currently at this moment, there is 6 unsolved murders that Ivan is a suspect for. So that actually says a lot. And that's kind of where I was saying earlier that that whole year where they say Ivan didn't kill anybody. Do you really think that he wasn't killing anybody during that time? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think Ivan killed more people than just 7? Do you think he is the person who killed it? There's not really any other rumored people to have done this because of the fact that all of the evidence and everything, the people's belongings, the victims' belongings are at his house and his family's house. The only other thought is that he didn't work alone and that his brothers were involved. That's the only other thought, is that, well, it could have been 2. The other one is that his family does know more than they say. That's allegedly, okay? We don't know, because why were stuff of the victims found at the mother's house? And I do, if I remember right, believe that some were found at one of the brothers' house as well. So, do you think the family knows what Ivan was up to? What are your guys' opinions on that? I'd love to hear it. I will leave in the Harley, hold on. I will leave in the description box down below all of the references I used to find all my information. So if you wanted to go more in depth, because there's so much that I could have added still. I mean, this is a big case. There's a lot to it. A lot more to Ivan than I really could have added. This could be so much longer. This could be like close to a 2-hour video. But I did add the main points to this. So there's a lot you can look into for this. But I will leave all of my resources in the description box so you guys can check them out. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if there's any cases you guys want me to cover. I hope you guys stay safe and well. Coming up, you guys have a video called Ostomy Fresheners, where I put to the test a few different fresheners for going to the bathroom with an ostomy bag, or if you just want a normal freshener just to use the bathroom. And then we got Def Leppard Saturday and some White Lion on Sunday. That is your videos for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye.